Guys, what's up? Darcy here at 6 Strings 9 Lives. Welcome to part 5 of my top 50 heavy metal and hard rock albums of all time. Thanks for tuning into these episodes. It's been a lot of fun, kind of reminiscing, remembering when I bought some of these, got into these bands, like I said, certain concerts, entry points. And remember, it's a very small sample. I did kind of relegate myself to 50 bands, one album from each band, and kind of the what impacted me at the time. Like I said, I could easily expand this probably to a list of 200 of my top albums, which would include more from most of these bands, I would say. Obviously, there are some awesome bands in here, great memories. So we're going to get into this last part 5, and then I'm just doing my last minute arranging for a WASP ranking, which I'm really enjoying. Most of the stuff I'm hearing, know their catalog quite well. So I hope you're looking forward to that if you are a WASP fan. Also, this past Saturday, I don't know if you saw it, but overall, I don't know if you know this, but my favorite overall metal band, just traditional metal, has been Judas Priest for years and years and years. And this past Saturday night, they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, whatever category, it doesn't matter to me. They're there. They got recognized. Alice Cooper introduced them, which was fantastic. But just to see KK Downing, and sorry about that, need a level in here. KK Downing up on stage, interacting with the interaction with Richie Faulkner and Rob, it just put chills down my spine. Whether you agree with him leaving or how he left or whatever, it doesn't matter to me. I've always been in the camp that I would love to see KK Downing back on stage with Judas Priest. Business-wise, I think it would be a wise move. I think it would sell a lot more seats. You know what? Give me your opinion in the comments. Maybe you're not a Priest fan and don't really give a shit, but I do. I absolutely, like I said, the hair in the back of my neck was standing up. I watched the footage no less than 20 times already. Took little screenshots, the whole bit, just like a big old silver-haired, gray-haired kid. But all right, let's enough babbling. Like I said, sometimes I can talk about metal all day, but what I'm here to do is kind of close off the last of these 10 more to make 50 of my top albums of all time. And in episode 1, there was a band that I showed, Faster Pussycat, which this other album, which is huge, there's no explanation needed for this one, but this album came out within 2 weeks of Faster Pussycat. So remember to go check out Faster Pussycat's debut album if you have not, because it is in the ballpark of this album for me, for sure. Maybe some of you don't hold that one as high regard as this, and I get it. I totally do. But this is my original cassette that I bought both of these albums on whatever the second released. I don't know whose album came out first, whether this one was 2 weeks before or whatever. But there's my original cassette of Appetite for Destruction. What can I say? This is a absolute great album, top to bottom. Personally, I don't care if I ever hear the big hits again. Songs for me that I love are, whatever you want to call them, the deep tracks. I think every song on here is a deep track, really. But some of my absolute favorites are Night Train, My Michelle, and Rocket Queen, You're Crazy. And that's a great song too. Actually, I love the acoustic version on Lies of You're Crazy, but no need to show this one much more than I've already have, but definitely a very impactful album in 1987 for me. Let's talk about here. Okay, we're going to talk about, I had mentioned also in several of my videos, a lot of it back in the day, we didn't, pigeonhole shit. It was all metal. It was all metal to me. And this band, whether call them grunge if you want. And as soon as I say that, you're gonna know exactly who I'm talking about. I was never sorry, I got an itchy nose. I was never really into the grunge movement. Early 90s is actually kind of was a turning point in my life. I met my, future wife, and, started thinking with the wrong head and all that. You know that. Okay, anyways. But I still did keep up on a couple of bands, and this was one of them. Alice in Chains, Dirt, one of my all-time favorite, whatever you want to call it, albums. I call it metal. This has tons of metal elements, whatever, a little bit of grunge here and there. But I was really never into the Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Nirvana. I'm not a Nirvana fan. Nothing against any of those bands. They're just not for me. But there was something about Alice in Chains that just struck me just right. This was not my introduction, believe it or not. Well, not believe it or not, but Facelift was my introduction, which Facelift has my all-time favorite Alice in Chains song called Sea of Sorrow. But at the time, I was like, okay, I like this album. I think it's really good, but it took a few years for it to really kick in. It actually kicked in even more when I bought this, and this is when I really, dug into Alice in Chains. I love this album. I think it's, whatever you want to call it, their crowning achievement. I do have this one coming on vinyl. Always wanted to add it to my collection as far as vinyl goes, and it just had a recent reissue, which is cool. So, the cover. Okay, song, just tons of, what is there, like 5 singles off of this album? Them Bones, what else did we have? Rooster, of course, Wood, Angry Chair, love that song. There's just not much for weak tracks on this album. Can I even name one? Maybe Junkhead might be the weakest track on here, but other great tracks like Rooster, Rain When I Die. And like I said, this was just metal. You could have told me it was grunge. Like I said, I didn't give a shit back then. We didn't have all these fancy names for naming all the music, but let's talk about a couple game changers. Here was actually an album, what is this? As soon as I say it, you'll know it, but 33-minute album, was it? In the neighborhood, whatever. I was almost really scared to buy this at the beginning. Yeah, I'll just hold it up. You know the album. This is Slayer, Rain and Blood. Now, I am a Slayer fan for sure, but they're probably my least favorite of the big four. You know what? And each of us is different as far as that goes, and I understand. But there is a handful of Slayer albums that are an absolute necessity. I believe probably their first, right up until Seasons, including their absolutely awesome debut, Show No Mercy. Really new wave of British heavy metal, influenced, and then they really found their sound on Hell Awaits. But this was a game changer for me, and like I said, I was, kind of shitting my pants to buy this to begin with, because it was just very, and back then, hiding things from your parents and didn't, is my son or daughter into the devil? Oh my God, whatever. But hey, I'm still here. Everything's good. But what a game changer. The great songs. You know this album, but lyrically too. I mean, there's this like piece by piece, and ripping your flesh, gouging your eyes, tearing limb from limb, and then that just on another level. And of course, love songs like Postmortem, right into Raining Blood. Just a classic and a game changer for sure as far as thrash, and more extreme thrash, because if you've been with me for any amount of time, you know that I was late to the party on some of the a lot of the German thrash, the Teutonic Big Four, which to me was a little more extreme than the North American Big Four, and a lot of you will agree with me on that. But for me, Slayer was probably about as extreme as it got. For that was 1986, that album, and some great albums after that too. So let's don't lose track. We got that one too. All right, let's follow suit. Thrash, Big Four, Game Changer. You know, I loved Master of Puppets when it came out, and I've actually, that's in this top 50 in one of those other episodes. But when I heard this, and it was the video on Much Music here in Canada for Wake Up Dead. I know there's a lack of lyrics on that song, but it doesn't matter. This album and the video for Wake Up Dead was an extreme game changer for this guy. 86, you know, that was probably the big thrash turning point, and is my favorite Megadeth album to this day. We'll give that away, but if you'd still like to check out my Megadeth album ranking, go for it. But yeah, and I don't mind the cover song on here. It's okay, but lyrically, I was just blown away at some of this stuff. You know, The Conjuring, my absolute favorite album closer of any album ever is on this album. My Last Words, just the way it ends, die, and you know the guitar tone for that too. Killer tracks like Good Morning Black Friday, you know, the iconic Peace Sells, Wake Up Dead, as I've already mentioned, Devil's Island. There's just, you know, I don't know if you'd say I Ain't Superstitious is the weakest or weakness for this album, but it's still a 99% for me, for sure. And like I said, a game changer. When I finally got a hold of those lyrics, I don't remember if my original cassette had the lyrics, but I had, you know, was hanging around with some other people that owned the vinyl, and I took their the inner sleeve of it, and I photocopied it or whatever I did, and I just read along with those lyrics until I knew them by heart. Should we stick with, we're going to shift gears because there's going to be a good mixture of thrash, and I know hard rock is in the title because I have shown in this 50 some that I would consider, you know, hard rock. I just threw it in there to avoid any, you know, confusion, but most of this is, like I said, it's just metal. Let me just grab a quick drink. All right, here's a huge game changer for me. I remember the day that I was over at a friend's house. His parents were quite cool. This was right around, well, the year this album came out, so that would have been 1983. They let us sneak a beer here and there, stuff that, you know, wasn't really allowed at my house, but was allowed over there. And my friend put on this album, and there was this really cool beginning. There's some giveaway right there. And then this guitar, and I'm doing that no justice whatsoever. And sorry, Mick Mars, and congratulations to Mick Mars too on a fantastic career, and an underrated guitar player, and a guy who I'm not going to say carried that band, but without him they would not be where they are today, I'll tell you that much. So leading into an absolute game changer for me is Shout at the Devil. This is been long my favorite Motley Crue album. Like I said, the first time I heard Shout at the Devil, and you know, I thought, okay, this is okay, I could bring this home. You know, we're not shouting with the devil, Mom, we are shouting at the devil, so it's all good. And you know, just forget how these guys are dressed and stuff, let's look past that. But anyways, my original cassette had, if you know this album, the cassette version of this had the four guys on the front, but the original vinyl had this. This is a recent reissue. There's the back cover. Love all the hits on here. I do love, and this is an album I can still put on top to, you know, put it on and finish it right through and love it. Deep tracks that I love on here, if you want to call them deep tracks. Let's Bastard, Red Hot, and one of my deep track favorites, and always has been, is 10 Seconds to Love. And of course, I like the hits on there too. But yeah, like I said, game changer for sure. Love this album. And yeah, you know, and sorry to see Mick go, but I understand his health issues and things like that. You know what, the rigors of touring and stuff like, and especially as we get older, I mean, you know what, even there's no running down the stairs every morning here either, right? So let's move on. What do we have left here? We have actually quite a bit of awesome ones. Lots of these bands I've done rankings on, some I haven't. But I remember getting into Iron Maiden in 1983. Peace of Mind, one of my all-time favorite albums too. It would definitely make this list at some point if we expanded it, or if we just kick some bands down the ladder. But regardless, just prior to this album's release, we were anticipating this, and it was always about, what was Eddie going to look like on the cover? And I remember I was in high school at the time, and my one of our friends got this album a little bit early. I don't know if he was down in the States or something, but he brought it to school, and we were still 2 weeks away from release date in Canada. But I just remember we passed this baby around, and so yeah, this is definitely on my list, Powerslave. And you know what? Even though Eddie was just this face, in this pyramid, the pharaoh, the whole Egyptian theme, we're like, man, that is so cool. He went from having a lobotomy to this, to the, that kind of, that continuation of, the debut album up into a point. There was always kind of a theme of where Eddie was going, what he was doing, and a bit of a continuation. That kind of stopped over the years, but regardless, it was always about what's Eddie up to. But just a marvelous album. Love it to this day. And at the time, and this is the old original cassette that I bought on release day. And at the time, we were just fascinated with Rime of the Ancient Mariner, because it was probably one of the longest songs I've ever heard at that time. There might be one or two others. It depends if you're, into other bands prior to that. And some I was late to the party, like Rainbow or whatever have you. But here's the J card. Definitely going to hang on to this. This is tons of memories. But like I said, Rime of the Ancient Mariner is just like, wow, how can these guys play that long? And, what a great song. And ended up doing it on Live After Death, which was just one of my all-time favorite live albums. That's a whole other video. But yeah, Powerslave, Up the Irons, definitely a impactful album in my world. We don't want to miss anything. What do we got? Two. All right, let's go with... Let's switch gears back to thrash. Now, I got into Anthrax, I'm going to say, through the video on spreading the disease for Madhouse, but never really fully grasped. I'm actually going to tell you that I didn't like it at first, put it that way. And then when I finally realized that, you can actually have a real true singer, and I don't mean any disrespect to anybody that's in a thrash band and sings, but Joey that's what separated this band at that time. We're not going to include their first album, but Joey, once I grasped the fact that we had a true metal vocalist in a thrash band, man, it just worked. And this was the album that did it for me. This is my original cassette of Among the Living. Love this album to this day. My favorite Anthrax album. And so cool that a lot of these bands, most of these bands are still going. And that was the other thing I thought about, is like, here we are 35, 40 years later, still loving the same things we loved back then. And I think that is pretty cool. And, that's partly why I do these videos, is it's a lot of it, not partly. It is a lot of, I virtually have nobody in my everyday life to talk about this stuff. And that's why I came on here in the first place, and to talk about stuff like this. So, this album, there's not much to, sort out there. What about tracks? I mean, man, Indians, one of my all-time favorite songs, Among the Living, of course. Caught in a Mosh. There's There is no sign of weakness on this cassette whatsoever. All right, let's rip into, and you know what? At the time, even this metal, it's more in the first album, more on the glammy side. As much as I love Skid Row, Slave to the Grind, I always will go back to their debut. 1989, I was going, in really a good time in my life, and the memories were good, and this was always in the cassette deck in the car. Debut album from Skid Row. I've always been a fan of the first three albums. I hear the new one is really good. I have not listened to the whole thing yet, but for me, honestly, I probably won't buy it. It's all about the memories of these first three Skid Row albums, and I know a lot of people drop off after the first two. That's okay, but I am of the fan base of Subhuman Race. I think it is a bit of a departure for sure, but I do enjoy that album. But this one, 18 in Life, you heard that song over and over. Youth Gone Wild, I think that was the first single, and it was heavy. I loved it. And a couple deep tracks that I like on here. Well, and of course you got the big hit, I Remember You, but I think my favorite deep track on here is a song called Here I Am. There's a part where Sebastian said, "You don't need a crystal ball." And I just love the breakdown of that. And the album, you'll know that. So Skid Row, debut, love it. What are we missing here? What, we got that. I should stay organized, that's for sure. I think we got two more left to go. If you've been any part of any of my videos, you'll know I'm a huge Accept fan. Back in 1986, I think that was late 86, got the bad news that Udo Dirkschneider is leaving the band and moving on. And but Accept basically had an album already in the can, ready to roll, and they gave it to Udo to do for his UDO debut album. And this has always been my favorite and one of my, like I said, all top albums of all time. This is 1987's Animal House by UDO. This is the debut. And at the time, so there's a lot of lineup changes in this band, but another band that I followed happily, I say I followed from start to finish, have not missed a release. Just great traditional metal. Just like Accept, absolutely love early Accept, from Breaker to Russian Roulette. You're not going to beat those 5 albums. That is 5 consecutive absolute masterpieces. But this is basically a continuation. This would have been the album that came after Russian Roulette. And there's actually a song on here where Peter and Stefan from Accept are on this. Lay Down the Law is basically an Accept song because it has those more Accept-like backing vocals, the kind of the gang style vocals. Love that song. The title track for this, Animal House, is one of my all-time favorite UDO songs. They Want War, great track. Warrior, check out that one too. But yeah, no looking back for UDO. I buy anything and everything from the German Tank, Udo Dirkschneider. And what do we got? One left here. What was I going to say? I think it was the last video I had talked about, or maybe the third part. Doesn't matter. I discovered Merciful Fate after I discovered King Diamond. Now, in the case of Black Sabbath, I actually discovered Black Sabbath. I knew of Black Sabbath, but really discovered Black Sabbath after I discovered Dio and kind of started backtracking. And then you get, at the time, 1982 is my real kind of start of the big metal journey. And, of course, knew of those, songs like War Pigs and stuff like that, and Iron Man. And, but I backtracked, and because I was am and still am a huge Ronnie James Dio fan, I discovered this album. And yeah, absolute masterpiece. Top to bottom, love this album. Mob Rules is a really, really close, close to this album. It's kind of like taking, Melissa and Don't Break the Oath, or Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning, or, Peace Sells and Rust in Peace. That's how I feel about Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules. But this one just beats it out by just a little bit. But like I said, every track is great on here. Neon Nights, Children of the Sea, Lady Evil. I've always loved that song. And the title track, Wishing Well, Die Young, another great track. Lonely as the World, Walk Away. Yeah, this is like I said, true masterpiece and one of my favorite, or one of my top albums of all time. And I think we got everything covered. I didn't miss anything. But hope you enjoyed the whole series. Will I expand it someday? You never know. There's definitely room for it. This is only 50 bands, and I don't know. I was trying to think about how many bands do I actually listen to. So do I listen to, maybe 100 different bands overall? Maybe. Probably not quite that. But lots of good ones to check out. I had also mentioned that I'd love to do a video on my top 10 EPs or mini albums. I would definitely combine that, EP/mini albums, because there are some albums that aren't quite studio albums that need some recognition. Definitely do something in regards to my top favorite live albums of all time. And yeah, so anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. I am gonna just pound a little wasp here for the next couple hours and get this ranking straightened out. And also, wow, what else we got coming up? Gonna have an update soon after that, but I'm pretty sure the Wasp album ranking will be next. Thanks for watching. Thanks as always for subscribing and joining me. It's just, and I love the interaction. I will try to get back to you in the comments section. And yes, until next time, stay heavy.